Friends, welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my surly, wet, robe-wearing, flirtatious young lady and co-host,
Alex Dandino.
I mean, you're technically more of a Keanu, but I thought that would be more fun.
I was going to do a voice, and then I decided, you know what? Don't do it. Just roll with it.
Let me tell you something, white guys in 2020. If you're on the edge of doing a voice and you're not 100% confident, always walk away from that impression. Walk the fuck away. All right, guys,
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. As always, please take a second and leave a rating and review wherever you find the show. It helps us out way more than I can even express to you, especially on Apple Podcast app, guys. Woo. So for those of you that have been doing that, thank you. Please keep it coming. Please share with your friends. You can find us on any of the socials that you're on, especially on Twitter, at Film Alchemist, the number 1. If you have any ideas for things you'd like to hear us talk about, guest, co-host, double features, anything, we want to hear what you guys are watching and what you want to hear us talk about. You can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. And if you want to see the voices, or the face that makes these voices, the face from which these voices explode, you can find our YouTube, Nerd Alchemist. That's plural with an S at the end. All right, guys, the pod is still captive. Help! We're trapped. The pod's been bound and tied. We're held. I hope you guys enjoyed Misery. That was our first pod captivity show. Today, I am so fucking excited about this movie. I must say, I love the film Knock Knock, starring Keanu Reeves, directed by Eli Roth. I love this movie. And when I saw that this is a 4-point-something on IMDb, I was furiously mad. It's one of those
weird,
classic
right?
movies because you're like, what movie did you think you were going to watch, and what does this movie not do that you hoped it would do?
Right. Well,
had you seen this before, Alex?
Yeah, I had seen it. It was on, I mean, it's been on Netflix for a while. It was on Prime for a little bit. But, I mean, I've seen it a couple of times, actually. I think what's interesting, first off, I didn't know until I actually did the research. This is a remake.
I know.
And actually, like, the first legit remake of a movie from 1977 called Death Game.
Well, then there's also, like, an erotica remake, right?
Yeah, which apparently is not the true remake. This is, like, legitimately taking beat for beat, like, story parts. And actually even involve the woman who plays Vivian in the movie, Colleen Camp, is one of the original girls from the original movie.
That's awesome.
This movie, it's an interesting thing. Like, the things that I have problems with in this movie are so, like, not problems.
Yeah.
And it's weird to me that it's like 4.7 because to me, that is just like actively not understanding the movie you're supposed to be watching.
That says specifically that the vast majority of people didn't enjoy their time and think this movie missed the mark. And I think that's absolutely absurd. It's kind of like, it's the way I look at it is it's the movie I, like my mom would be excited to say, like, hey, do you want to watch this movie with me? Right. Because it's a thriller, but it's a little it's this super version of the Lifetime movie, which I love. It's just kind of trashy, good fun, and it's a really good, thrilling film to me. I don't understand what, because it's got a surprisingly great cast. I don't understand what this movie's lacking that people want.
I feel like this is a matter of misconception. Like people's preconceived notions walking into this are Eli Roth, Keanu Reeves.
Right.
You're like, okay, cool. So, Knock Knock, Eli Roth, Keanu Reeves. Eli Roth's movies include Cabin Fever and Hostel. Like,
right.
And I think 2015 had he done the Green and was the Green had the Green Inferno come out, or was that after
I think this was before that, but yeah.
Because I know the woman, Lorenza is the woman who's not Ana de Armas is his wife.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
So this is one of those really fascinating movies where I feel like people walk in thinking one thing, and the movie is serious, takes itself seriously enough. But like, if you're not going to get on board for what I would equate to being like superb campiness in some regard, then you're totally missing the point of this movie, because it's a one and done. Like, it's a great, it's 100 minutes. It's tight. It's fun. And it's really, really weird. And if you're not going to be on board with that from the jump, I don't really think this is the movie for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I take a little bit of umbrage with people saying shit like that because if you have a wife and kids, this movie's fucking terrifying.
Oh, this movie is yeah,
it
this is a whole nother
gave
level.
Me was watching it because I just was like, can you fucking imagine this? Like it was because this is. We'll get into like kind of the setup. I will say this falls into this kind of like hidden genre that I love, which is what can I just start fights with my wife over? Right? Like there are just movies, like here's a good one, right? Like one of my wife's favorite song is the Love Song by The Cure. Surefire way to start a fight with your wife is to tell her that Robert Smith definitely wrote that song to the person he's having an affair with. Uh-oh. Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Here, I'm going to... All right. So, yeah.
I heard you say love song.
Yeah, so he was having an affair with... But that's the thing, right? So she hears that and gets furious. She's like, no, love is in the title. It's to the woman he loves. I'm like, hey, man, if he really loved his wife that much and was writing this song for her, why is he hiding all these things he wishes he could say? Why is he acting in it? You know, and then my wife's like, you're ruining a thing that I love and means this to me. This movie's a great example of me and my wife, after every scene, kind of looking at each other, and I'm like, come on. Did Keanu deserve that? And she's like, are you kidding me?
This is a great movie that it's interesting. So you're saying love song. Mine is always the Pina Colada song because no one actually listens to the lyrics in that song. It is about the two biggest pieces of shit in the world trying to cheat on each other. And they're so bad at it, they end up cheating with each other.
Can you imagine having an affair with someone that willingly orders Pina Coladas? That's a dark song. That is a dark song. No, I did that same thing. When I proposed to my wife, I karaoke. It's a long story I won't get into, but I went up on a karaoke stage to like serenade her. And in my drunken stupor, I chose Angie by the Rolling Stones. So now that's tied to the beginning of our marital journey. That song's definitely about breakup and or your spouse dying. Like 100%. Yes. But this is one of those, this movie's so designed for the man to be like, come on, I know he like smashed a little bit in your marital bed, but like, come on. And then my wife's like, what do you, he's getting exactly what he deserves because, it is the brilliant thing of the film is, I don't believe, like when Keanu freaks out, he's like, death? You're like, that I feel like is the reaction, but you fucking let the demons in. It'd be like watching a Ouija board movie and being really sad that they're now being attacked by demons. It's like, you fucking played with the board. What do you want?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a peculiar thing because this is the weirdness of this movie. And the thing that always kind of like is like kind of grating against the edge of what I think is otherwise a really smooth ride in this flick is that the casting of Keanu Reeves is so weird.
Yes.
Because the dialogue is, first off, he is not an actor who's like meant for like heavy dialogue. And he's pretty much in every scene of this movie. It's a three-hander, and he has to be in almost every scene. He's not a dialogue actor. And it's weird because he has, I mean, we'll get to it, but like there are bits in this movie where we're like, this is another actor's part. Like, I don't understand why. He just seems he seems oddly out of place, and he's great. Like, I don't mean to say that Keanu Reeves is not good, but he seems oddly out of place for a movie like this that does what it does.
He fits the opening of the movie much better than the ending. Like I was telling you, this movie is prime Nicolas Cage territory.
Oh,
like
totally.
You watch this movie and you're like, this is a Nicolas Cage joint. The problem being is that it's hard to believe that opening isn't just wildly creepy with Nicolas Cage like trying not to have sex with the two girls. Like Nicolas Cage is gonna come off way more creepy in those moments.
Well, I think that and I mean, not to, again, we love Nicolas Cage on this show, that's no secret, but I think like the Nicolas Cage animal magnetism would sort of like, it would go the wrong direction because the conversation we're having and the one we were having before the show, because I had the same one with my wife. Like I watched the movie with her and she was like, every like, oh. And then like we were talking and I'm like, I think Griffey and I are going to make an argument that Keanu Reeves did not deserve such vile treatment. And And she literally looked at me and she goes, yeah, good luck with that. I don't think you're going to win.
Yeah,
But,
Amy gave me the same thing. I was doing a test flight. They call it a test pattern, right? And like a new airplane, you got to see if it can like handle winds and shit. And I was like, let me just float this little bird out that did Keanu do anything wrong? Shot down immediately. That's a crash and burn scenario. But
I mean, here, I'm like, my wife's Guatemalan. Like, I know for a fact if this happened to me, like, I know I would send the girls away immediately. I'd be like, nope, get the fuck out of my house. Get out of here right now.
Well,
get out.
There is a universe in this movie where it's sweet mercy that those girls got to him first, right? Like there are some of us whose wives you'd be like, I think it'd be worse if my wife like caught me.
Oh my god!
But no, I mean,
if my wife caught me, I'd be murdered. Back
to the Nicolas Cage thing, though. Can you imagine if he had done it right? Like he becomes the creepy predator, and then the movie is they go back home and they're like, we got to get back for finals, and Nicolas Cage is like showing up in their classrooms. That's the version of this movie if you cast him.
The Nicolas Cage version is like reverse Fatal Attraction. Yeah, that's perfect. I like
but
that.
It's funny because I think Keanu Reeves is a really good Evan at the start, right? Because there is this watching him like try to do dad dialogue is so weird.
Oh, like when he's on the FaceTime,
monster, and you're like. Like he's not, and he's like, did you pack the bomb in the chainsaw bogue? And you're like, oh boy. But it kind of works because you're like, what is Keanu really in this movie, right? This super fucking hip, smooth douchebag, right? He's like, oh, I just love vinyl. Oh, I used to be a DJ. Of course you fucking did, Evan. You know what I mean? Like, of course you did, right? And your wife makes terrible art. And you guys are overly rich, and, you know, you get it. You're like, but that's who he was, right? And I think that's an important part of this, is because you're setting up the fact that while he seems like he's a good guy right now, and he's, you know, he's there as a dad, and his family loves him, you get the sense that there is this douche Evan from the past that is waiting to erupt, right? And we set these little minds, like his family leaving him on Father's Day, and, you know, him and his wife were about to fuck, but I love the opening too because they have like that classic like rich white people house, right? And then they cut into the bedroom and they're trying to fuck on Father's Day, but like his back hurts, like they hurt each other. They're both wearing like their old frumpy pajamas, and you're just like, man, how relatable is that? How relatable is that moment where it's like, oh, this is one of those things we're supposed to get up for, but you know, like. Like it's something that bothers me in movies when people in movies just roll over in the morning and they wake up and like, let's make out and fuck, and it's like, oh, gross. I'm gonna put my tongue in that disgusting cesspool of a mouth. Like people don't brush their teeth before they have, but that's like old people shit. You know what I mean? Like,
but so no, but that's like that's what it is though. Like you see this movie came out in 2015, and I think about who I was in 2015 versus who I am now. Like this is what's great about Knock Knock in general is that. Over time, if you see it a certain time and you see it another time, your like the way your brain works changes based on who you're relating to. Like no one, I'm assuming, relates to Lorenza Izzo and Ana de Armas, unless you're a sociopath.
I feel like people like that probably don't watch movies. They're out like living lives.
They're actually doing this.
Yeah, like they're doing crazy people things.
So like it's interesting because like you're watching Evan through different lenses. So like when you're maybe in your early 20s, you're like still going out, you're partying and everything like that. You're watching like, oh fuck, that guy got fucked. What an idiot. How could you let that happen to you?
So you're saying like there's a crowd that watched this. You're like, tap that ass, Evan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's 1,000% a bro with like an upside down visor drinking a Four Loko.
When is he watching this in 1996?
Oh no, those things lasted. I went to school in San Diego. I saw that a lot.
Once you start down the dark path of the upside down visor, forever will it dominate your fate.
Forever will it dominate your destiny.
Yeah, for sure, man. No, but this is. But what I love about this though is, I really think the first act of this movie is near flawless as you can get. Right, Keanu's like weird stilted Evan performance works perfectly for me because when they leave and he's alone in his house, just like smoking weed and using a 3D printer and listening to Kiss vinyls, I was like, yeah, I know that guy. And that guy definitely thinks his dick is a gift to other people. Like, I know that guy. I know that world, right? And so you're like, all right, I'm with you on this journey. But then they do, I love, as we talked about this in a text thread, we were having a furious text thing as we're watching this, right? This movie's big give, right? And we talk about this. It's kind of like an unwritten rule of screenwriting is that there's one big thing the audience has to forgive you to make the movie work, right? Like, that's not how it... well, you got to give me one, and then the rest of it should make sense based off that logic tree, right?
Right.
And I told you, I was like, could you fucking imagine being such a lucky rich white guy that two girls show up in the middle of the night right when your wife has gone to the beach, soaking wet, asking to like use your dryer and play in your house, or squeezing your hard muscles and talking about, you know, like just seducing you, right? Like just giving you compliments. Like I'm a 35-year-old man, and the amount of compliments I get is not enormous, right? Like it's just, you know, my wife said the compliments she needs for like a baseline, and we're done with that part of our relationship. Yeah. And so I was like, can you imagine being such like just your life is so good that you're like, of course this happened to me.
Right.
This is totally a natural thing. Because that's what I was telling. I would immediately be like, how much did my wife pay you to send you? Or her assistant. Like I would smell a setup immediately.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's like like that's the interesting thing is the give in this movie is literally the premise. Yeah. Like the give is the entirety of the film.
But I think they do a really good job of making it believable that happens.
Sure. Yeah, like
this is what me and Amy were debating during the movie. Is I was like, all right, so what happens if you had like a nanny cam? And you see them like following me from couch to couch, and Keanu keeps jumping couch to couch, right? He's trying to give some space. But also he's like, you know, he's not like shy per se. He's kind of flirting a little. And I was like, what if you turned on the nanny cam? And all of a sudden I've slid back into, you know, early 2000s Josh, and I put on a tattoo album, and I'm like, and like, you know, the girl's dancing in your robe, and we're like pretty close to grinding. But then the Uber call arrives and they leave. And she's like, oh, you'd still be in deep shit.
Yeah,
I was absolutely. Like, how the fuck would I get in trouble for chivalrously saving these women? And I was, you know, of course I'm like playing. This is one of those arguments where you're like, I know I'm wrong, but I'm going to see where this leads.
Well, it's the double down theory. Like if you double down enough, eventually you'll be right. Like that's like the whole point. Like that's that is the essence of like decent marriage conversations is doubling down hard enough until you like either you can find a way to be right, or you look so ridiculous arguing it that like your significant other just goes, oh, that's just them. And they move on with their day. Because otherwise you go into this other branch where like you actually ruin that other person.
Yeah.
And they never want to talk to you again, which is not great.
But that's what I asked her. I was like, where is the line on this? I'm like, so should I let them in the door? I was like, let's say in the imaginary world of the Griffey household, they go to wherever they would go, right? And I'm just at home writing a screenplay that no one will ever read and in my underwear playing Xbox and shit. And these girls come in, they're like, oh, what's up? Oh, your hair and your beard, and oh, man, you're slightly overweight. That revs me up. And I'm just like, oh, man. Like,
dad bod. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
Hot and here, right? And I'm like, this could happen. It's go time, right? So I was like, all right, Amy, walk me through, like, where are the boundaries? I was like, should I let them in the door? And she's like, maybe. I'm like, I should let them stay on the porch so they catch pneumonia? She's like, all right, let them in the house. I'm like, all right, can they use our dryer? And she's like, no. Can they use our towels? Maybe. I'm like, what if I give them a towel and I turn around and they're already naked under the towel? And she's like, I don't know. And I was like, oh, see, so this is the problem. Evan has walked into a literal, his house became Pandora's box. He didn't realize he was inside. Because and that's the thing the girls say at the end I love, right? Is they're like, we thought you were going to be the one who said no, Evan. And then the other girl says, they never say no. And there is this thing when you're married where it's you understand that massive temptation, I'm assuming, right? Because being monogamous and being in a marriage, like, it takes a lot of work. And I think in today's world, it's easy to just say, this isn't perfect, fuck it, I'll walk away.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what Evan should have done.
I mean, I
know what he should not have done.
Well, here's the problem is like, and this is the part that I think this is where the logic of the movie works very well is that Evan technically didn't start it. Like, so here's what happened. Evan,
I also did a test pattern on that argument. Doesn't land well.
well, not didn't start that. I mean, basically, so think of it this way though. Like the logic follows this. Like, okay, let's say we'll reverse this. Let's say it's Alex. He's sitting in his underwear, playing Xbox, doing his thing, writing comics and screenplays no one's ever going to read. Knock on the door. 2 very hot women are soaked. You're like, oh, cool. I feel like the line.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, great. I feel like the line would be as soon as they left the like foyer area. That's like where I'm like, you got to go. Like
you have
that
like a foyer rule.
Well, that's got to be it. Like
what are
you
they
can't
do,
like
soak your carpet.
Well, it's like vampires, man. You don't invite the vampires in. You have, like vampires need to like that's like the whole thing.
But if
so
you let a vampire into your foyer, you're still getting drank.
You're still getting dranked, but nevertheless,
you don't let him even into the foyer.
Yeah. Well, that's beside the point. Like, let's say the foyer is outside. You know what I mean. Though.
There's a mystical foyer boundary. I like this. That should be a rule.
You know what I'm talking
can
about.
Step into a foyer.
But like the girls, so and this is the thing I love about this movie too is they do this great like, and I feel like this is a really common trope in erotic thrillers is the follow cam with the like essential victim, so to speak. Because like the camera follows Keanu, it never follows the girls. It always follows Keanu. Like so, he goes to get the stuff, and they're like, "Oh fuck, he's gonna come back, and they're gonna be gone. They're gonna be doing some fuck. They're gonna be naked. Who knows?" Instead, they're sitting in like that, like living room, kitchen area, and she's like, "It's warmer in here," and you're like, "That is fucking bullshit. This house is full of windows. It's not warmer anywhere."
They're also dancing to his. I'm like, "You touch my records." A vinyl hipster that immediately didn't draw the line at record touching, right?
Yeah. Well, that's like
this is the thing.
If a girl was in our house, and like started like leafing through comics, you'd be like, "Get out! I did not say you could do that.
Get your fucking shit. Get back out of that pneumonia-inducing shit.
You get pneumonia and die. I don't want to see you ever again." Like that's.
But no, I love that. I love that too. The way it follows Keanu. It's a really cool inversion of the camera, right? Which is. We think we're watching him in this predatory sense, right? Like he's watching these young nubile bodies, like, oh, right. I'm gonna collect them, right? Even in his like good routine, there still is this predatory vibe of Keanu. But what that camera is where like, oh shit, we're gonna catch your ass, right? The camera lens is predatory, as Keanu is kind of predatory. I don't know, it's strange, but I mean, it's just really well written and played out, right? There's a lot of he mentions the wife, and then they start talking, and it feels like they give him a lot of outs, right?
They do give him the opportunity.
I'm telling you, when he goes down, right? Because everyone would say when they go down, he goes down. I think that's not right. I think it's when he slips into DJ Evan. The moment he's DJ Evan, now he's trying to play a fantasy of sorts, right? Because by the time he goes to the bathroom, he already is doing the new hot trend in adult videos, as I hear from other people, is stepbrothers and stepmoms and whatever. And it's always like, oh, no, my dad's going to find out. Or, oh, our parents are going to find out. Oh, okay. That's the level of fight Keanu puts up. He's like, no, we shouldn't. I'm cool. And then it's just it's on.
Yeah, once you start that shit, that's Then
he slipped into DJ Evan, and he did that first.
Right, you're utilizing a skill. You're utilizing a skill that you might have already had. Utilizing a skill that you thought that originally got you laid. Like think about it. Like DJs get laid all the time. That's exactly what that is. Like you're crossing a line simply because you're participating in a way that would have automatically gotten you girls when you were younger, before you had a child, before you had a wife, before you had the nice house, the nice life. So
the other cool trick in that little sequence too is that they knock directly before he can light up his bowl, so he doesn't even have the "I was high" excuse.
Right, he's just fucking I
mean, but that's what I like is that we all know you're like, you shouldn't do it, and as you watch this unfold, you're like, fuck. I'm like, could you imagine? Like the wife, the kids, everything. It's so fucking scary, but also you're like, it's really believable, right? Because, I mean, that's just the thing. It's like, That's the Pandora. When he opens the door, right? It's like it's this kind of inverse Pandora's box, and it's that temptation is omnipresent for everyone, I think, and he just gets trapped. And then they just launch into this like very intense sex scene.
Yeah.
Very wildly intense.
It's a lot.
But it has to be, right? Because this is what the movie's saying is even if you're, because this is, like you said it earlier, right? Is he's not the one who went out looking for it. So this is a little different than Fatal Attraction or even something like Hard Candy, these kind of movies where it's, you are punished for an transgression, right? He didn't go out looking for it. So he had to be lured, in kind of a more simplistic way.
Right.
And to show the sex is so insanely wild, and performative, that's how you reach the guy who's like, I would never do that. And you're like, you've had the fantasy. Everyone's had the fantasy. That like there's still that one last great like movie sex romp in your future. Right?
Oh yeah.
I was gonna ask you. Do you think there's a version of this where it doesn't have as bad of an ending? Because they let him go all the way through with it and wake up with him the next day.
Right.
If he wakes up and is like mellow, could this have gone another way?
Well, mellow in what way? Like he was like tolerating them being there?
Yeah, he's just like, what's up, guys? He walks in and has like some of the Cheerios and just like goes and does his job.
I don't know. Like, I mean, that's not really
not, right?
I think it would have probably gone the same way because that's not quite the game they're playing. This is what, because it reminds me of like the two movies that I thought about mostly when I was watching this was like Funny Games and then like the back half of Fatal Attraction.
Yeah,
this has a lot of funny games too.
Funny Games very much. Well, this movie has a couple of those weird hanging threads, right?
Right.
Where they mention 2 or 3 things, and the movie just never comes back to it, right? So one is, why was Keanu selected, right? And they say, oh, we tried all your neighbors. You're like, there's no way they went all the way up and down that hill and found them, right? And then you're like, well, his wife mentioned that maybe he had been flirtatious at a restaurant earlier. Maybe there's some kind of trap there where they, like, tag you. When they kill the assistant, right, which is a real fucking right turn in the movie, when they're throwing his paper-mache body, oh, God, in the back of that van, they go, oh, Ronnie's going to have a hard time with this one. Oh, he can make anything disappear. And you're like, what the fuck is that? Like, now there's just this whole, like...
Yeah, there is, like...
Criminal
I think there are movies that... I mean, that's the kind of movie that sort of... I mean, it's the same way I felt when I watched Funny Games. Like, Funny Games is one of those movies that all of the pieces seem like they're all there. Mm-hmm. And you're curious why these people aren't just like trying to run out of the house, trying to escape, so on and so forth. But again, you also realize that the movie's a total fantasy anyways because they break the fourth wall a lot. And there's a lot of that aspect to it. But if you take all that out, it's sort of the same idea of a home invasion where it's just it's the stranger you didn't know you needed to know at this point.
Oh yeah.
So
they even have that thread too where this was one of the weirdest ones. I didn't know if you caught it. Why it is, but they say monster scared. They use his intimate, like, inside joke with his family against him. And he was like, oh, you've been fucking spying on me. And then we just, like, wash over it. We never figured out. Because there was a moment where I wondered if, because Funny Games struck in my mind, too, where I was like, is this fantastical in a way? Because there's the shirt at the end she's wearing, right? The tank top says, it was all a dream. Right. Earlier, when they first, like, chain him up, right after they come back and beat his ass, they write, it was not a dream.
This is not a dream on it with.
And so I wondered, when he dropped them off in the car, right, and he's like, get the fuck out of here. And he comes back to his house, and he's trying to work, and he's cleaned up the house, and he hears the sound, right, in the dark house. He goes out and sees the broken family picture. I was like, is that where it shifts maybe? And they're giving us leeway, but I just don't think this movie plays in a fantastic manner.
I mean, it doesn't, but there are elements of it that I thought were very, like, they trashed the house. I thought that was really fascinating. Like, the house was destroyed. Like, There's things written on the kids' pictures and that kind of thing. And that was where I was like, there is some like pathos to this in a way. Like there is some internal monologue almost. Like when you look at the house, like I don't know why they would like dismantle and destroy the entire house. Like the best, like one of my favorites is when they're like vandalizing her art. I was like, how can you tell? But nevertheless, like
I thought the same thing too. Like when that guy ran out to die to protect her sculpture as they're like hammering it, I'm like, that piece of art sucks. And I was like, the kind of people that would pay large amounts of money for that suck. I was like, that was like my favorite guy in the movie. He was pretty chill because I love how he's like all buttoned up assistant, and all of a sudden he's like, I'm from Oakland. I know a couple of hoes. And he gets all hardcore. I was like, yes, this guy's not going to take the shit, right? Like, this is the guy, right? He's just a no-nonsense whatever. And I was like, he dies because of a combination of asthma and terrible art. It hurt. That death hurt. It was so unnecessary.
But that's like, well, and that's the part where, and see, his death is so oddly convenient. It's like, oh, well, of course he dies of asthma. Like,
and
that's like, it's those things that are like, kind of like, because there's campy, and then there's the level of campy that I'm not willing to accept, and that is almost there.
Well, it's weird because they go from...
It's so close.
Right, well, they go from, like, maybe they're honeypotting this guy and they're going to extort him, right? Because this is the game where it doesn't get the game as good as Hard Candy necessarily, if this is real, is Hard Candy is she put herself out there and he made himself the target by, being a fucking actual pedophile who tried to hunt her down.
Right.
They are hunting this guy who seemingly had done nothing to bring this on himself and then is just overly tempted in the moment. Again, that's another way to phrase it that Amy was not a huge fan of, right? I just don't have the proper way to say that at the moment.
Well, this is like this movie and Revolutionary Road are two great examples of movies you watch with your spouse and you're like, we shouldn't talk about that movie afterwards, should we?
Well, I heard this argument on Twitter a while ago where people are mad, like, can't men and women just be friends? And you're like, I mean, maybe in a universal theme, but I'll tell you what will never happen is I come home to my wife and it's like, hey, where were you? Oh, I was at, Tiffany from Hooters' house. We were just watching Dexter season 2 and, shared some popcorn and it was totally cool. And she's like, no! Like, that's, so like, maybe in a better world, but this is why. Because on a base level, we're all just these fucking pheromones and chemical signals, man. Yeah, that's what and their teenage logic, they're like, it's not right to be monogamous, we're animals. And you're like, well, that's spoken like a dummy, but not altogether wrong. Right? Like,
right.
But yeah, that's what I mean. But the assistant guy had no part. That's the weird one, because that one felt wrong to me, right? Like, because he had already cleaned up that statue too. So they would have had to re-vandalize the statue they had already vandalized earlier. Right. So I was like, maybe he felt bad for it, and her assistant, maybe he's worried that he was actually trying to defend her art in a way that he clearly wasn't. I don't know how to phrase it, right? But there was something off about... Right. Also, the assistant finds him, and he's just like, I'll run back out and handle this without contemplating a way to, like, handle it. It felt very strange. But then the one that feels 100% real and so cringy and painful is when his therapist, Victoria, shows up.
Yeah.
Because she's just like this cringy LA stereotype that we all know about, right? They're like way too personal. We're therapists, and I'm kind of like a healer, so like we're going to be best friends. And she starts in on her shit, and you're just sitting there like, get the fuck out of my house. Like, leave my property now. I don't want to do this. Right? And by him trying to, be cool, then when that girl comes out and, like, raps behind him, and he has to just face the brunt of Victoria, it's like, you fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
That one felt too... Like, there's nothing campy about that one.
No, that's real, man. Like, that's the part that really
real.
Is, like... That is, like, guttural, man. Because...
Yeah.
It's not even on a level of, like... Because it's not even a level of getting caught. Like... You can get caught and be cool, I guess. I don't know.
At this day and age, right? Statistically speaking, a lot of people have affairs and get divorced, right? Yeah. So I don't think it's weird because the consequences of this movie are so massive compared to something that I think is fairly common to a lot of us. But what I think this movie does in a good way, again, I think most of us think about it like, oh yeah, people just have affairs and get divorces all the time. This one shows you just that up close, personal tragedy of that. You know what I mean?
Well, but I also think, and this is, I mean, again, this is because I know who directed it, and I know who wrote it, and I know who watched it now, is like, we're men. We watch it from a very male point of view. But I also, like, I think about the big thing, like, to me, like, the big climactic moment is the free pizza rant. Like, his whole thing.
Fucking
which
awesome.
Which is an amazing piece of writing and totally would have been delivered like an ace by Nicolas Cage. That's the scene where I'm like, Nicolas Cage should have been in this movie.
He should do that as a quarantine activity. Just, like, read that monologue for us. We should see if we can reach him.
We absolutely should. But, like, that to me is the quintessential... That is like the essence of this movie at large, which is this is a male-driven horror fantasy, essentially, because this is a guy who callously treats these girls poorly and then refers to them as free pizza. Like, he pleads his case in the worst way possible. Like, I cannot fathom a worse analogy than free pizza and pussy. Like, those two things should never be the same equation.
It's not ideal. It's not an ideal way to, like, lay out an argument, right? It's not Gregory Peck is Atticus Finch level, lawyering. But what I love about that moment is I think he's saying what a lot of the male audience is thinking, which is like,
100%.
My fucking house. But this is why it's so good, is because in saying something that seems true, right, and seems to confess his innocence, you also see this kind of dark underbelly of Evan, right, where he's crafted himself as this man, and when they're working as, like, concubines, right, like mindless, drooling, sycophantic concubines, then he likes it. Then he's cool, Evan. But the moment it becomes messy and complicated and they ask him to admit his fucking dirty deed, then he starts lashing out at them. It's your fault. You're the fucking whores. And it's like, you're the one who's fucking married, right? Like, man, they're not breaking vows, right? You're fucking and you're married. It's your fault. But when he lashes out at them and tries to break them and destroy them, the problem with this scene is that by this point, we already see them committing so many crimes.
Right.
Like, that part comes after an actual murder. Like, they've actually killed an innocent man. So when Keanu says mean things to them, it's not like, oh, you shouldn't say that to them. They killed someone. Right?
I mean, but they're not culpable. Absolutely.
But it shows that, but what I think you're right about is it shows the way he truly thinks. Like, he never saw them as anything but a way to, make himself feel better and better than he was.
And I think
when he got that the next morning and he does the get the fuck out. Granted, they were going all wild things on his kitchen, which is nonsense.
Not okay.
So, but that's what I mean. I think that moment is so great because you know there were guys thinking that. Like, oh, you wanted it. You finished.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's like
before the set. It's like
that, and I mean, that is like the best. That's the best example of what it is itself. Is like, you wanted it. Like, it's a great male versus female argument, because a guy in that situation is like, you did it. You were part of this. You did the whole thing. And this is like the whole crux of a lot of the arguments and a lot of what's happened politically in the last few years. But, like, the best part is it ends, and all you're sitting there thinking is like, yeah, but you're married, man. Like, you know the rules. Like,
if they came
there
to get
are rules for you,
and then they act crazy after the fact, that's one thing. Only one person is breaking a vow and fucking other women in his marital bed.
Yeah, exactly. You
So
know,
that's
you
like-
have.
That's a really
It's exactly
hard
what
thing.
you said earlier. You have rules. They don't.
Yeah, so like, hey, wife, come lay in the crusty remnants of our broken vows. Like, yeah, you're the worst one in this scenario. Granted, this is what I mean. Like, there are some rough edges and things that don't add up, right? Like, they have a cleaner. How did they know about the monster thing? Did they spy on him? You know, maybe death by DJing is not everyone's cup of tea. I personally thought it was fantastic to have a guy who's like a DJ be tortured by the sounds of DJing. I did the French chef kiss. I was like, that is brilliant. But that's it. So there are moments that are so strange, right? And the pedophile thing is very unusual in this movie. They keep calling him a pedophile as if to justify murdering him.
Right.
And we don't know that he's... And then at the end, they pretty much say he's not a pedophile. So, like, there are weird things that don't add up. You know, they kind of insinuate that he may have assaulted his daughter. You know, when she's having like her freak out.
I feel like they make a lot of assumptions. Like, I think that's Ana de Armas's problem.
But
like, I think
they were spying on, so they knew his kids called him the monster. But that's what I mean. So there are these moments that are weird and seemingly could connect, but I don't know that they ever do. But again, I don't think that's the worst thing, right? Like, your mind would be going apeshit if this was happening. You know, I'll tell you 100%. The moment. This is the moment that I think really nailed it on the head for me, which is when he's all up to his neck, right? And he's like, please don't, please don't. And they're like, we're not going to kill you. Like, we're not savages. You're like, you already killed someone, right? So the movie does something super stupid, which is, oh, no, we're classy. We're cool people. After they've committed an actual murder, right?
Right.
But then it cuts to a very interesting moment, which is we're going to upload the sex on Facebook. The weird thing is that they upload the non-consensual sex versus the threesome or whatever. Right. That's a weird choice in and of itself. But the thing that this fucking was like, I was gobsmacked by this, right? Is when he he fights his hand out instead of taking the gag out, instead of freeing himself. The first thing he tries to do is delete that social media entrance. Because that's what this all is. It's a destruction of the facade of, I'm the perfect guy. I am this amazing guy, right? Who's just been put upon. He's trying to take away everyone's ability to see him for what he is, man.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's messy for sure. This movie is a messy film. I'll ask you, I had a question for you. The weird extra scene at the end when the family comes home.
Right.
What the fuck did you make of that? They come in, they see the trash house, and the kid says, Daddy had a party.
Daddy had a party.
The mom is aghast, and we never see Keanu's face in this moment.
I mean, to me, that's just... I don't know. I guess, like, to me, that would end up being about... that the problem really has just begun. Like, Keanu Reeves... I don't know. I didn't really think about it, to be honest with you. It just seemed like a tag at the end.
But I'm like, why add that as an extra tag and like not have the moment where Keanu has to stare his wife in the eyes? Like, that would have been a cathartic moment for sure for my wife, and I would have liked that moment, right? Like that this journey had this kind of. I like that emotional ribbon. I wondered a little bit if that was a key that. Maybe he fucked those chicks. They got up and trashed his house and left, and he was still passed out in the bed. Like the wife had come home and found him and was about to find out what he had done. The old-fashioned way, right? And that maybe the nightmarish fantasy of, her assistant being killed and all that stuff, maybe that wasn't the case.
That's interesting. I mean, that would make more sense. And again, it would also factor in a little bit more to how we've been kind of perceiving this like fantasy element to the movie itself.
Because other than that, I could not for the life of me. I probably was sitting there rolling around for way longer than I should. I was like, there's no reason to show the family returning to the home and not seeing their father, right?
I mean, I feel like the St. Elsewhere... pull the rug out from under you thing doesn't really work here.
Because Eli Roth's not a guy that's going to be like, that would be too traumatic for the audience to see his kids depression.
Well,
As they see their
I don't
dad.
know. I don't know. Based on Eli Roth's oeuvre, I'd say that is probably the closest he got to torture porn in this movie. Is like a guy having to like totally fess up to the fact that he had two
Definitely
girls
some
over and
good
they
porn,
totally
yeah.
banged out.
Oh my god, dude! The moment when he had to run outside to talk to his wife, and they were just pressing on the glass.
Oh my god!
It is such a. I mean, it's such a perfect capsule of this movie, right? Is this kind of weird male fantasy, but then they put it in this subtext where you're like, oh my god, and that's what I love about this is that the consequences are just fucking so personalized, right? Like even Fatal Attraction, a lot of that movie happens outside of his home. This is in his fucking house where his kids live, right? She's wearing his daughter's outfit, and it's so personalized to really, because that's what this is like. Was kind of my final thought. I was talking, I was just sitting there again. This is like me and my wife, like kind of having these like sniping matches, right?
Right.
And I think this is healthy for marriages, right? You're like, all right, let's push some buttons and see what comes out, right? Like a vending machine, right?
That's part of the deal, yeah.
Yeah,
you
you're
gotta do
like,
it.
let's use this as an ethical, battleground, so that we never run into these things. And I just said, I was like, was it worth it? Would he still walk out of there and be okay at the end? Does he get dug out? He's still rich. He's still an architect. He'll still get, money. He'll be rich. Like he's still going to be fine. He'll still have a different version of that life. He'll still be getting women and whatever.
Right.
But then I was like, I don't know. Like the thought of having to, because that was the scene that was crazy to me. That's another one is where they're like, we'll let you out right now. All you got to do is call your wife and just fess up. Say everything you fucking did to us. And he can't even do it.
Yeah.
Because at one point, there's a point where she has the gun on him. And she's like, he won't run because he'll shoot me. I'll be like, yeah, fucking shoot me in the back so it looks like a home robbery gone awry. So I can save the dignity of my wife and kids. That's
the interesting thing, too, is like they've already committed murder. Yeah. What is the point of not murdering this guy? Like it's the psychological element.
They think it's going to be a worse price to pay.
Right. It's a matter of torturing him. It's a matter of making him pay for, like, it's the penalty of comparing them to pizza.
Yeah, because it is weird. He has that line where it's like, who the fuck are you to judge me? You're a murderer. And then it's like, I mean, they're not necessarily, they are the ones carrying out judgment, but in a way, like, you passed it on yourself. You opened the fucking door, and then you opened your zipper, right? Like, you could have gotten away at the door. You could have passed that one off in a way. Once you took out your cock. Like, worst case scenario, you run out to the Uber and be like, dude, take me to B-dubs. I'm going to smash wings and cry. And then call the cops and say, there's 2 nymphomaniacs in my bathroom. Right? That's what he could have done. He didn't do that. He went in there and did the internet stepbrother. Oh, no, mom will catch us. All right. It was a hard finals week. And so but he couldn't even confess at the end because he still thought there was a way he could weasel the fuck out of this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the lesson. That is the true lesson of this movie is that there is no getting out of this. If you're going to choose to do this and you're going to choose to be that kind of person, like, the logic tree you have to follow then is there are going to be consequences. There is no consequence for you cheating on your spouse.
But that's what I think this movie is a good thing to watch for a married guy. Because I 100%. Think every guy's like, man, if those 2 women walked into my house. And that's what I've heard a buddy phrase it this way. He's like, man, if I'm ever going to cheat on my wife, I'm swinging for the fence. And I was like, that's a guy who's going to cheat with like a 4. Like, he's saying that now I'm swinging for the fence. I'm like, that's because he's already thinking about cheating. And he's trying to find a justification for it. But in this wild context, right? Imagine your 2 dream women showed up at your house soaking wet and just attacked you. And this is the thing. I think we watch it pulled away from the screen as, an audience and with our wives and us arguing during it, right? So there's an extra level of separation from the fantasy element. Right. But I'm just one of those guys, like, this to me plays like Wishmaster, right? There is no movie about getting your wish or fantasy granted where everything goes right and you don't pay a price for that. And I think that's the thing. There's a little hitch in the movie where he finally gets him in the car, right? And he drops him off at a playground. He comes back and cleans up his shit, and he goes right back to work in 3D printing. And in his mind, he's like, I got away with it. I'll have to pay off my therapist or whatever. But, like, maybe, just maybe, I'll fucking skate. And then he sees that broken picture, and all hell breaks loose. It's stress-inducing.
It's an anxiety-ridden parable for the modern age.
Yeah, and that's what they say. Because every man watches this movie is going to go, would I be the guy that said, no, I don't want to be a disgrace to my wife, to my kids. I don't want to have to deal with all this, whatever.
Right.
And they say, everyone, no matter how much they love their wife and kids, they never say no. And so I think this movie becomes a very good tool for men. This is exactly why you say no.
No.
Right? To go back, let's tie it back to the pizza analogy that you hate so much. There is no free lunches. Even pizza.
Too true.
Yeah.
Too true.
You gonna pay on the back end. I don't know. I just think this is a really well-crafted, very slick, thrilling, kind of trashy movie, and I love it, man.
It's great. It's a perfect, like, little B horror movie. It's fun.
And it even has some weird, surreal bits, man. It's fun. It's a good movie. It's way better than a fucking sub 5 on IMDb. Granted, I know everyone's like, why do you care about IMDb's and Rotten Tomatoes, blah, blah, blah. It's not an exact science, but it is a barometer of where people feel about movies. And I feel like this one, if people go back and give it a chance and are ready to watch that kind of... This is one of the great that kind of movies, man. I think you said it, erotic thriller. This is an erotic thriller, and it's really fucking good. And it's really fun, and, you know, it's pretty weird, man. I dig it. I dig it.
It is excellent.
That's it for Knock Knock. Don't open the fucking door, guys. First the foyer, then your zipper, then your grave. In that
not
order.
Not all pizza's that good, guys.
There, now we're doing pizza metaphors. We're just as bad. All right, guys, that was it. The pod is held captive all month. Coming up next, an absolute classic that Alex introduced me to, which I always love when that happens. The Manchurian Candidate, the Sinatra OG one. So that's coming up on Thursday, guys. If you haven't done it yet, we had a guest host, Molly Henry, come on Friday for a very special
good. Thank
Jim
you, Molly.
Henson
It was
double
great.
feature, man. Yeah, she's fantastic. It was amazing. I can't wait to bring her back for more shows. Guys, please take a second, leave a rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts app. Make sure you're telling all your friends to subscribe on all your social medias. We're on everything. You can find us there. Email the show at filmalchemist@gmail.com. filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Tell us the movies that you would like us to get in the old lineup. We had a fan who did it, and we're going to do a whole theme based on a suggestion. So we're listening, guys. Also, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's Nerd Alchemist, plural with an S at the end, so you can see our lovely faces. Me and Alex look very much like the two dream hunks that would show up on your door soaking wet. Wink.
And then you'd be like, cool, I'm calling Child Protective Services.
Yeah, if me and Alex were casting the movie, there'd be a lot more door slamming. All right, guys, for the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dandino.